Benvinguts i benvingudes a l'acte d'investidura de Vandana Shiva com a doctora honoris causa per la Universitat Pompeu Fabra. Presideixen l'acte Laia de Nadal, rectora de la Universitat Pompeu Fabra, i Montserrat Vendrell, presidenta del Consell Social de la UPF. Les acompanya Núria Almirón, padrina de la doctoranda.
Mitja tarda i queia un plogim suau, el cel tapat, escuts de cendra i mort, presoners d'un món de possibilitats, de nens podrits per tots els estats. Els herois antics eren devorats per voltors amb la mirada trencada. Els nens es mutilaven els uns als altres i les postres es fonien en la nevera oberta. I la pluja es va assecar i els núvols es van obrir en un instant explosiu. El món es va enfonsar més enllà de l'horitzó. I ara per tot, arreu on vaig veig la llum fondre's en blaus, verds, turqueses, òxids i vermells. L'univers antic s'ha plegat sobre el seu eix i el perímetre esdevé el centre de tot. Els àngels de la mort han donat vida al meu jardí i ara em sento com un nen abandonat, lliurat a la llum i a l'espai. Els astres siderals han obert la taquilla del cinema en runes. I la pluja es va assecar i els núvols es van obrir en un instant explosiu. El món es va enfonsar més enllà de l'horitzó. Tan sols un horitzó per viure, tan sols un horitzó per viure, tan sols un horitzó.
Doncs molt bon dia a tothom. Sigueu benvinguts i benvingudes a la cerimònia acadèmica d'investidura de la senyora Vandana Shiva com a doctora honoris causa per la Universitat Pompeu Fabra. Hem començat l'acte, crec jo, de la millor manera, amb la música i la veu d'en Roger Mas, a qui vull agrair a qui vull agrair avui ens acompanyi en aquesta cerimònia. És un plaer poder gaudir en directe i a la nostra universitat del teu gran talent. A continuació, demano a la senyora Montserrat Vendrell, presidenta del Consell Social de la Universitat, que llegeixi l'acord del Consell de Govern de concessió del títol de doctora honoris causa per la UPF a la doctoranda.
El Consell de Govern de la Universitat Pompeu Fabra, a la sessió de 14 de desembre del 2022, acorda concedir el títol de doctora honoris causa per la Universitat Pompeu Fabra a la senyora Vandana Shiva per la seva contribució acadèmica i impuls de campanyes de mobilització en camps diversos com els drets de propietat intel·lectual, la biodiversitat, la biotecnologia, la bioètica i l'enginyeria genètica. In the meeting of the UPF Board of Governors on December 14, 2022, it was approved to award the degree of Doctor Honoris Causa of Pompeu Fabra University to Mrs. Vandana Shiva for her academic contribution and promotion of mobilization campaigns in various fields such as intellectual property rights, biodiversity, biotechnology, bioethics, and genetic engineering.
Gràcies, presidenta. I tot seguit demano a la padrina, la doctora Núria Almirón, que vagi a buscar la doctoranda i l'acompanyi fins al lloc que ocuparà l'escenari.
Preguem als assistents que es posin dempeus.
Senyora Vandana Shiva, sigueu benvinguda a la Universitat Pompeu Fabra. Miss Vandana Shiva, welcome to the Pompeu Fabra University.
Una vegada una nena bonica que tenia en un sac totes les flors i caminava lenta, anava a les palpentes i escampava pel bosc les seves flors. Totes les flors, totes les flors, totes les flors, totes les flors. I anava al seu darrere una nena dolenta que saltava amb delit sobre les flors. Ningú no la mirava, s'ho feia tota sola, la mateixa que abans escampava flors. Totes les flors, 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 totes les flors. Si veus com cau el tul, si sents com tot te'n vas, una lluna, un cabàs, una gola, un bramul, un forat i un coet, i a tombar sang i foc, o escopeta i garrot, una casa, un hortet. Que s'encengui el que no crema, que es fongui el que no es fon, que ressoni Quirela i son de Cap d'Any a desembre. Tu vols àngels xisclant, que no dormi ningú, vols que arribi dijú el crepuscle esclatant. Una casa, un hortet, un forat i un coet, el crepuscle esclatant, tu els àngels xisclant.
Thank you, Roger Mas, again for sharing with us your music. As I said before, it's a pleasure to be able to enjoy your talent in our university. So now the academic sponsor, Dr. Núria Almirón, full professor of the UPF Department of Communication, will read the laudatio of the doctoral candidate. Núria.
Namaskar, Dr. Shiva. Good morning, Rectora Nadal, distinguished guests, consellera, and everyone present. Bon dia a tothom. It is with great honor and pleasure that I serve as the academic sponsor for Vandana Shiva's nomination as Doctor honoris causa at the Universitat Pompeu Fabra. Dr. Shiva's contribution to society is not easy to summarize. Her work transcends the boundaries of disciplines, geographies, and ideologies. She is a scientist, philosopher, feminist, ecologist, pacifist, and social justice activist. For more than 4 decades, she has been one of the most prominent and tireless advocates for planet Earth and a pioneer in showing how violence within human society is directly linked to our violence against the rest of life. Throughout these decades, she has become one of the most influential voices in the global discourse on environmental justice and sustainable agriculture, earning descriptions such as radical scientist, fierce intellect, and as Jane Goodall put it, a powerful voice to which everyone who cares about life on this planet must be grateful. Not least, she has also become, as some have called her, the worst nightmare of big corporate power. Indeed, she is one of the brightest and most formidable critics of the global power structures undermining democracy, and in particular, a formidable opponent of what she has called agriculture imperialism and the poison cartel, that is, the agrochemical and biotech oligopoly of interests that pollute, degrade, and threaten life on our planet. Dr. Shiva has intellectually championed the idea that science should serve the common good, not greed. And she has embodied that idea by putting it into practice. Through her actions, she has demonstrated that it is not only urgent, but also feasible to align knowledge with social justice and the reduction of suffering. This is why it is almost impossible to separate the scientist from the activist and the thinker in Vandana Shiva. Vandana Shiva was born in 1952 in the Don Valley in northern India, in what is today the state of Uttarakhand, a Himalayan region bordering Tibet and Nepal. She was the daughter of a forest conservator and of a mother who had abandoned a senior government job to become a farmer. As a result, Dr. Shiva grew up in close contact with nature and in a unique family environment. Her parents gave her the opportunity to grow up in the dual worlds of India's rural majority and westernized elite, with her and her siblings learning as much from the forest as from privileged education. This allowed them to develop, in her own words, as free spirits, a freedom that Vandana Shiva has vigorously defended throughout her life. Thus, after earning a degree in physics in India and being attracted to nuclear physics, she realized that much of science is partial. The trigger for Dr. Shiva's first awareness was actually her sister, a medical doctor who exposed to her the dramatic effects of nuclear energy on human and planetary health, effects that her training as a nuclear physicist had overlooked. She was subsequently attracted to quantum theory for its non-reductionist, non-mechanistic paradigm, and in 1979 she earned a PhD on quantum theory in Canada. On her return to India, she chose, as she put it, the difficult and challenging path of trying to combine scientific research with social and environmental responsibility. The catalyst for Vandana Shiva's career was her involvement with the TIPCO movement in the 1970s. TIPCO was a grassroots response to widespread environmental degradation threatening local ecosystems and the livelihoods of rural villages in Dr. Shiva's birth region. Although men were involved in the movement, women were its backbone. It was women who started hugging trees to physically stop the loggers from cutting them down. This turned into a massive non-violent protest that inspired the world, making tree hugging a global symbol of environmental activism. Through this experience, Dr. Shiva identified the root of the problem: the reductionist, extractivist view of nature promoted by men in power. This led to the publication of her first book in 1988, which explored the links between women's activism, environmental issues, and social justice. In this book, entitled Staying Alive, she identified development policies as a project of Western patriarchy, a project based on a reductionist view and on the displacement of women and the care principle. Reductionist forestry was led at the time by the World Bank's Tropical Forest Action Plan, a plan based on replacing biodiversity with single species. These were single commodity plantations that divorced forestry from agriculture and water management, as well as from the needs of communities, and ignorantly equated planting, that is, any tree planting such as eucalyptus monocultures, with nature restoration. Dr. Shiva pioneered showing how the reckless exploitation of tropical forests contributed to the material basis for industrialization and economic growth in the colonial and post-colonial periods for the benefit of the colonial and post-colonial elites. She also denounced that the same elites were imposing policies of forest conservation that were in fact policies of deforestation. The pattern identified by her in these deforestation policies would reappear again and again in the various areas she researched and engaged with thereafter. This pattern involves four main ideas. First, it blames ordinary people rather than profit as the root of problems. Second, it regards the reductionist knowledge of privileged Western male elites as superior and necessary to non-Westerners. Third, it promotes privatization as a solution to scarcity among the poor. And finally, it involves the belief that market-oriented commercial solutions will ensure care for all sentient beings on the planet. Since that point, this pattern has been extensively documented and discussed by Dr. Shiva in the rest of her work, including her eye-opening research into the so-called Green Revolution in India. Her role on this topic was pivotal, showing how the violence that erupted in Punjab in the 1980s was not religious at its core, but resource-related, and directly linked to the introduction of chemical-based Western agriculture in the region. In the volume, The Violence of the Green Revolution, she dismantled the miracle rhetoric promoted by private US foundations, the World Bank, and multinational seed and chemical companies that profited from the so-called miracle. Through her work, we discovered that although high crop yields alone are a convenient measure for business, they are a very poor indicator of real success because they neglect the immense hidden costs of the increasing yields. These costs include the destruction of genetic diversity of food crops, the pollution of soil and water with chemical fertilizers, pesticides, fungicides, and herbicides, the resulting destruction of soil fertility, the creation of new pests, and the increased demand for water due to an increased need for irrigation of the new crops, which at the same time triggers water conflicts. The result is increased yields, but at dramatically high environmental and social costs that have been neglected by the proponents of industrial agriculture to this day. Dr. Shiva showed how the miracle seed rhetoric was part of a development ideology that, under the guise of scientific and technological modernization, led not only to environmental and social disruption, but also to uniformity, centralization, and the undemocratic takeover of world agriculture. Her critique of the downsides of the Green Revolution in India was instrumental in later encouraging critical research on similar neocolonial policies imposed on other countries of the Global South. After the Green Revolution, Dr. Shiva's major life project has been the Seed Satyagraha, the seed campaign, which has projected her as the Gandhi of grains. This Gandhian campaign is a peaceful non-cooperation movement against the appropriation of agriculture by multinational corporations. It represents a commitment not to cooperate with what she calls the patenting of life and biopiracy. Dr. Shiva has persistently reported on the unsustainable nature of chemical-intensive agriculture, being one of the first to denounce the insanity of a highly polluting agriculture, which, moreover, is oriented not to feeding humans, but to feeding other animals which we exploit massively in a most cruel way. However, where Dr. Shiva has been a most prominent voice is in the field of the biogenetic modification of organisms, or GMOs. She has scrutinized what is behind GMOs in agriculture, exposing not only the environmental implications, but also the vested interest behind them. Her work in this area has brought international attention to the issue of intellectual property rights in agriculture. Her scientific background has been crucial in this regard. consistently debunking what she calls the myths of the GMO miracle and its parade as cutting-edge science. She has shown how behind GMOs we don't find knowledge, wisdom, or care, but rather ignorance of life cycles, arrogance, and greed. It is largely thanks to scientists like Dr. Shiva that our current understanding of GMOs and agrobiotechnology in general is not limited to the propaganda of agrochemical PR machines. Finally, I would like to focus on what is probably Vandana Shiva's most important intellectual contribution, her demystification of Western science and technology, and her contribution to unmasking the patriarchal project that sustains them. Her work has been key to exposing the hidden reality of Western science and technology. Western science and technology are considered successful only because we systematically neglect their full impacts, externalizing and detaching these impacts from the science and technology itself. Mainstream science today is, in fact, as Dr. Shiva puts it, a very narrow patriarchal project for a very short period of history. A project that was conceived for the sake of privileged male elites and that presents the exploiters of nature as experts. A project that wants us to forget that the modern agrochemical industry is a greenwashing of the chemical industry created to sow death during the Second World War. A project based on an obsolete paradigm of genetic determinism, which assumes that genes are atoms of biological determinism. As Dr. Shiva has brilliantly exposed, these are assumptions that come from the idea of control and domination. This is ideology, not modern science. Let me conclude this speech by celebrating what I see as Vandana Shiva's 4 greatest legacies. First, let's celebrate her significant and courageous contribution to independent knowledge. Dr. Shiva has bravely confronted the powerful and exposed the flaws in their approach. That is, the fact that the paradigm based on a biotechnological, chemical, mechanistic war on nature has not alleviated but exacerbated suffering on this planet. Second, let's celebrate her example in action. Dr. Shiva's platform, Navdanya, has created dozens of seed banks to preserve food biodiversity, defended small farmers' rights and food sovereignty, researched and taught organic and agroecological practices, and fought the biopiracy of traditional knowledge and indigenous biodiversity. Her participation in the successful campaigns against patents on wheat, basmati rice, and the neem tree represents significant victories against the privatization of natural resources and traditional knowledge. That is, knowledge that is historically validated as opposed to lab-created and PR-promoted. Third, let's celebrate her strength based on compassion and care. Her ecofeminist ideas, first articulated together with German feminist sociologist Maria Mies, have become the ethical foundation of all her work, including the over 20 books she has written throughout her career and the countless reports, consultations, and trainings she has provided to all sorts of institutions, organizations, and people. Dr. Shiva's ecofeminist approach is essentially a radical counterpoint to the androcentric Cartesian paradigm that dominates modern capitalist societies. Her approach involves the empowerment of women, the replacement of competition and violence with cooperation and compassion, and above all, it involves the understanding that everything in life is interconnected, and therefore that the continuation of the old project of human domination over nature is not only unjust and destructive, but also highly inefficient and short-sighted. And finally, let's celebrate Dr. Shiva's inspiring example in breaking stereotypes. Let's not forget that Vandana Shiva started her career in a time when, even more than today, peasants, women, youth, and development countries were expected to silently obey the dictates of the knowledgeable West as imposed by men in suits. When Dr. Shiva burst onto the scene in her bright sari, she dramatically shattered society's most entrenched norms. So let's express our deepest gratitude to Dr. Shiva with his honoris causa. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Núria, for this extraordinary laudatio. Now I ask the academic sponsor to accompany the doctoral candidate to the presidential table. Yeah. Just a moment. By a board of governments of Pompeu Fabra University, you have been nominated Doctor honoris causa in testimony and recognition for your relevant merits. So by virtue of the authority that has been conferred on me, I'm handing over you this medal as a symbol of this title and of the supporting diploma. As you have been admitted to the university, receive in the name of the University Senate an embrace of fraternity from those who are honored and pleased to your brothers, sisters, and colleagues. So, there you go now. Okay, so now I pass the floor to the Dr. Vandana Shiva. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. I receive this honoris causa and this medal with joy, with humility, with gratitude, celebrating being here at this university. I've received many honorary doctorates, but this is special. It's special because from across from this hall is an amazing meditation center in a university. Beautiful paintings. I don't know of any other university that has a painting per year. I mean, they have a logo and it stays on and on and on. And then lovely music. I want to thank. The song, it said, was 14th century. Timeless. And thank you for summarizing my long, long, long life. It is a long life. And I will go home with very warm, fond memories of today. Also, I've never been at a university function with only women on the stage. So thank you, Dr. Nadal, and thank you, Professor Vendrell, And thank you, Dr. Almirón. Dr. Almirón summarized a lot of my work. And because we have so divided our world, our mind, our thought, people think that I've done different things in different parts of my life. I've done the same thing. It's been a continuity of both living with full awareness of nature. The reason I left a nuclear career is when my sister asked me about radiation, and we're not taught that, We are taught about chain reactions, but we're not taught about the health impact. And I said, for me, knowledge is about the whole. It's about the system. It's about how it all hangs together. And I can't develop a knowledge where I know how to generate energy, and I have no idea what it does to the human body. That kind of partial knowledge for me is not knowledge. That's why reductionism has always been ignorance for me. And especially in living systems, because living systems are alive. Living systems are based on interconnectedness. Living systems are based on self-organization. And it's a quantum physicist who filled this gap for me. Schrödinger wrote a book on what is life. The quantum physicist Schrödinger, who everyone knows about, the cat who'll be dead or alive depending on when you open the box. But no one knows about his work on life. And he says living systems are alive and they have negative entropy. All mechanical systems are put together from the outside and they release positive entropy, which is where the pollution comes in, which is where the emissions come in, which is where the heating comes in. Have you ever seen a plant heat up while it grows? And yet the plants and microbes have cooled our planet from 290 degrees to 13 degrees, from 98% carbon dioxide to 0.03% CO2. Why aren't we talking about that aspect of the planet's creative energies, the planet's technologies? Photosynthesis for me is a technology of the plant. Technology doesn't have to be man-made. All technology is transformation. Nature transforms, women transform. If you really look at everyday activity, if you look at farming, who's doing the most farming? Women. Who's doing most of the preparation of food? It's changing a little, but still, the transformation of food, women. And yet, because the brainwashing has been done, when we go and do a survey, you ask any woman, what do you do? I don't work. Women work day and night. They grow the food, they take care of the young, they take care of the old, they hold community together. And yet, because work was defined as A, extraction, 2, selling a bit of your labor power, but worst, if you read Locke defines work as the spiritual work of capital. This construct called capital is working. It can't do anything. It's just a construct we created. The wealth is created by nature, by the soil, by the plants, by the seed, by people who work with nature, people who work with their bodies, people who work with their creative minds. And the mechanistic worldview, which for me has always been very artificial, whether it was walking in the forest or later doing quantum theory or all my life doing ecological work. The mechanistic worldview is the big block. Because not only is it mechanistic, as you mentioned, it's patriarchal. It's really Bacon. Bacon writes a book called The Birth of Masculine Time and says enslaving nature is masculinity. He misdefined men, masculinity, and nature. And so we created a violent system of knowing or not knowing how the earth works. And yet all knowledge systems of the world, all the sciences of the world, all the new sciences in the world, 100 years ago quantum theory was created, and it showed us there is no separation. You cannot separate. The world is entangled and interconnected. In quantum theory, we talk of non-locality. That was my thesis. Indeterminism and non-locality. So my thesis was on hidden variables and non-locality in quantum theory, that you can never separate. Two particles that were once together will always be connected light years away. Second, beautiful. And for the students, this is particularly important. We created instruments to make everyone think that you're essential. Women are essentially inferior to men. Nature is, of course, passive, raw material, and you're born with an IQ. Your intelligence is fixed. These measures like yield or growth actually measure much more the deceptions of a controlling mind than the reality of a living world. In quanta, there's potential. Every young person who has come to this university has come with potential. And I can tell you, this university is going to cultivate that potential even more. Just the little bit of experience I've had. So there is no fixed thing in the world. The inert, passive world that's been constructed in our minds doesn't exist. What exists in the world is consciousness, potential, evolution, interaction, interconnectedness. And we've been made blind to these real processes. And with this, of course, if there's potential, potential can go to hate and potential can go to love. Potential can go to wars and potential can go to peace. It's how we cultivate it. It can go to hopelessness and it can go to hope. It's the cultivation. And the cultivation also means, because there are alternatives and there are different potentials, there's indeterminism. And the mechanical thought molds us into this idea of linear fixed trajectories. There's no linearity in this world, everything is circular. There's nothing fixed in the world, everything is evolving. There's no determinism in the world. We often exaggerate the destructive power of some people who project their power. Oh, and in 10 years' time, this will happen, and no humans will be needed, and 99% humanity will be useless. And that's where hopelessness starts to seep in, because one construct is made to look like the inevitable future of humanity, rather than the many possibilities that we live in and have. So separating is the beginning of violence. And seeing the interconnectedness is the beginning of peace, including peace with nature. It's the seed that has taught me so much, because the seed, by its very nature, is autopoietic. And when they ask me and say, how do you know? I said, well, I know a coconut will never give me an oak tree. And a wheat seed will never give me a rice paddy sapling. The patterns are built into the seed, right? Just like for the quanta. In a quanta, the potential is enfolded, as it's called, enfolded to unfold, to become. In the seed, the tree is already there. The patterns are there. In reliability. No external control. It's autopoiesis, the poetry of nature, being written by life itself. And the seed, show me a seed who says, I won't give you seed till you give me a royalty. Seeds are abundant. They spread. They multiply. One seed will give you 1,000. One seed will give you 100,000. The 100,000 in the Latin is called million. It's the million. And that's why the family of crops, which became my favorite crops 35 years ago, and now the world is waking to them, the millets are called millets because they have 1 million seeds. But the beautiful thing about the millets is each seed is very tiny. It's just full of nutrition. And from our work in Navdanya, we're finding it's very resilient. You can have a drought and you can have a flood, and it'll deal with both. They've been called primitive grains, they've been called coarse grains, and in our language, these little seeds have been called the fat seeds. So they got obesity all wrong right from the beginning. They got obesity wrong in the measuring of yield, because yield doesn't measure how much production is taking place. It doesn't measure how much the soil and biodiversity has regenerated. It definitely doesn't measure the well-being of the farmer, which is why all farmers are rising right now, every country. And it doesn't measure the quality and health in what is produced. So we are creating nutritionally empty commodities full of toxics that's making everyone sick, 75% diseases related to ultra-processed food, chemically toxic food. Soil's dying, 75% water gone, 10 times more water is used. 93% biodiversity gone. Because every chemical in agriculture, its only purpose is to kill. So you assume everything is killing everything else, and then you kill everything. So insects, what do? Finish them off with insecticides. And plants, which with photosynthesis, give us our climate, give us our food, give us our nourishment, give us the shade. No. We must create herbicides to wipe them out and declare most of them weeds and useless. So glyphosate gets extended 10 years in Europe in spite of all the evidence that it's a carcinogen. And worse, it kills everything green, not just on the top of the soil, but in the soil itself. 50% greenhouse gases from an industrial system based on fossil fuels and fossil chemicals. I've just done a new book, which should be out within a few months. I call it The Nature of Nature, the metabolic disorder of climate change. Because we see the Earth, too, as a mechanical object to be manipulated, climate to be engineered. We don't see the Earth as a self-organized Gaia, which has given us the context in which we are and can live. And of course, that context is changing because of pollution. But for me, the seed is a big teacher for the simple reason the seed is the ultimate self-creation, autopoiesis, complex self-organization. And that's why in '87, when the same industry that brought us pesticides and chemicals, sitting there and saying, now we will do genetic engineering in order to take patents on seed and we must have an international law to prevent farmers from saving seeds. I said, every sentence of yours is bad science. You're saying we will make genetically engineered organisms in order to take patents on seed. So for you, GMO means God move over. Because a patent is granted for an invention, something you have created. A seed is not created. You might add a gene. You can add a gene by agrobacterium. You might add a gene by a gene gun. But that one addition of a gene is not making of the seed of its generation on generation on generation. The seed makes itself. So that's the day I decided I was going to save seeds, create community seed banks, but I would work with my government to speak the truth of life. You know, we have a very beautiful ancient text which says, to say this is mine and this is yours. You are less and I am more. You're my friend and so is an enemy. All this is a result of petty thinking. The evolved mind knows that the whole world is one family. Now, I should write these notes to our parliament, and they adopted a law that plants, animals, and seeds are not human inventions. Therefore, they cannot be patented. Therefore, seeds have no patent in India. The technology of transformation can have a monopoly, but the seed in the field grows itself. And that's also the reason, you know, I've watched my grandmother using neem to protect our silks, to protect our grain. And then the US government, a big chemical company, claims to have invented the use of neem for pest control and fungal control. So we fought a case for 11 years. With nothing, except truth on our side, love and friendship on our side. I contacted the head of Greens in European Parliament and the head of IFOAM in the world, and I contacted, of course, people. I brought 100,000 signatures to the European Patent Office. All we had is love, friendship, truth. 11 years we fought the US government and W.R. Grace, and they lost. The neem won. The neem's name, as a director, indica, I didn't realize it till I started doing this campaign. Azad Darakht is a Persian name for the neem. And it's called Azad Darakht because in the peak of summer, its leaves are full. And in the wind, they're blowing, and they're like a fan. There's a lovely lady here sitting with a fan, but like the neem tree is a fan for everyone. And beautiful green, and it's used for fodder, it's used for food, it's used for our dental care, it's used for, it's 1,000, it's called the village pharmacy with 1,000 uses. And then the basmati, our valley is famous for basmati, that was patented, we dealt with that. Wheat, our ancient wheats never caused gluten allergy. So Monsanto had patented our wheats for selling for those who are, because 1/3 of Europe is full of gluten allergy. So what a big market. We challenged that. Because all indigenous knowledge is sovereign knowledge. And at least from my understanding of epistemology, what language you use to describe a phenomena doesn't change the content and process of that phenomena. It's just a description. Chemists describe it one way, physicists describe it one way, biologists describe it one way, sociologists describe it one way, peasants will describe it in another way, indigenous people will describe it in another way. And what is usually done is indigenous knowledge is translated into the metaphors of whatever is the discipline of contemporary knowledge. And that is called the invention. But biopiracy is not an invention, it's theft. And that's why we put into the laws that biopiracy patents are illegitimate and illegal and they should never be granted. But all of this work, at the end of the day, is about our relationship with a creative, generous, diverse, beautiful earth. Our understanding of it is the science of it. Our relationships of care in it is the economy of it. The economy of care is the biggest economy that sustains all other economies. Money making is chromatistics. Money making is not economy. Economy is about oikos, our home. The knowledge is the knowledge of the home. The management of the home, most of which women do, is the economy. Art of living is what Aristotle called it. So we've named so many processes with the opposite name of what it really is. We call war peace. We call less food more food. That's where the yield issue comes in. So I said, no, yield doesn't measure anything. So we're going to measure the real thing. So we said we'll measure nutrition per acre because nutrition is what matters. We can feed 2 times the world population by conserving and regenerating biodiversity. We do not need to be at war with nature in the pretense of feeding the world. The world is starving. The world is being poisoned. Species are disappearing. And then we turned it into wealth per acre because the economy of rural areas everywhere, and I'm sure even in Spain, is in crisis because of the industrial globalized model. It's a negative economy. So we did wealth per acre. 10 times more incomes if you do not waste money on unnecessary toxic chemicals and non-renewable seeds. And you build local economies rather than growing commodities for a handful of corporations. And now we're working on care per acre. How well is the soil doing? How well are the insects doing? How well are the birds doing? How well are the people eating the food doing in terms of health? And early research is coming out. The soil has far more nutrition, and when the soil has nutrition, the plants have nutrition. When the plants have nutrition, they bring nourishment to our gut microbiome. When our gut microbiome is nourished, we are healthy. So the whole system is flowering again. And all of this begins with respect for life, regenerating the commons, knowing that women and indigenous people and farmers through their doing have knowledge, and rebuilding and regenerating an earth family in which everyone participates. All beings participate. The earthworms participate, the soil fungi participate, the pollinators participate. And together, we can move from the despair of collapse and extinction to the regeneration of let's do our best for each other and the earth. Thank you.
Aquesta nit he obert aquella porta. Duia tancada, qui sap los dies. Diamants rubins, maragdes, orefils d'argent, convulsions i tensió muscular. De sota l'arc, frontera del desert, no distingeixo el de fora del de dins. Els núvols passen a 7 vegades el seu temps d'on és llengot o més gripau sobre un gran roc. La nena està corrent corrent pel camp, la porta oberta pat a pat, i ho sabia d'altres cops, que quan l'obres ets un, i ho sabia d'altres cops, que qui torna ja no ets tu. En temps dels tripis, quan els hippies eren hippies, algú va veure un cel espaterrant, com un ramat d'ovelles que ha mort el pastor, un paradís borratxo de dolor. Vent catabàtic, mirall del fotre, les fronteres són cul de mal seient. He deixat sola la meva nina i ara no sé on és la meva nina. La meva nina on és? He deixat sola la meva nina i ara no sé on és la meva nina. La meva nina on és? He deixat sola aquella pàmfila i on s'haurà ficat gata maulets, un xai amb pell de llop. La nena està corrent pel camp, la porta oberta bat a bat, i ja ho sabia d'altres cops, que quan l'obres ets un, i ja ho sabia d'altres cops, que qui torna ja no ets tu. Ratatatatam, rampampiruririm, trarariam, 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 trararim, tiroriam, tararim, tiroram, tram, tram, tram. Un porc i un vell miratge blanc del coll, no en traurem pas el vent. Distància ho harmonitza tot, això és qüestió d'augments. Distància ho harmonitza tot, és qüestió d'augments. Aviam, de la lupa, esclar, s'entén que qui torna ja no ets tu.
Una llavor no és només un ésser viu adormit, de la qual sortirà una planta, és també història, és també coneixement popular, és cultura, és un recurs de memòria etnobotànica, de memòria etnogràfica, que ens vincula a allò que som i a allò que serem en un futur, perquè al final som conscients que tot evoluciona. Potser d'aquí 50 anys estarem cultivant unes varietats que ara mateix potser encara no han arribat, no? Per tant, és saber què tenim i adaptar-ho en cada moment als reptes i necessitats que tenim presents com a societat. Aixarculant és una entitat que el que busca és aconseguir recuperar les plantes oblidades, que són plantes silvestres comestibles i varietats agrícoles tradicionals, per tal que serveixin per ajudar a transformar els sistemes alimentaris. És a dir, tot allò que passa des que plantem una llavor fins que un aliment arriba als nostres plats.
No ho veuen la feina que tens amb allò, amb aquella planta. Ningú no ho veu, això. S'hauria de fer que la gent entengui el que costa d'arribar una planta al plat. Això la gent no... Si un no és de pagès, no ho faràs entendre amb ningú. Perquè jo ja he enraonat amb molta gent de totes les edats i no hi ha manera. Hi ha gent que a l'enciam encara no saben ni d'on surt ni com es planta.
Actualment, més del 85% dels aliments que arriben a Mercadarna provenen d'altres indrets del món. Això és un dels factors que, entre molts altres, provoca que la pagesia tingui poques possibilitats de viure dignament, que tinguem uns paisatges cada cop menys diversos i que, a més estiguem uniformitzant, tant a nivell gastronòmic com a nivell cultural, la nostra alimentació. Això ens porta a no ser resilients davant del canvi climàtic, ens porta a ser dependents de grans multinacionals que controlen les llavors i l'alimentació i ens porta, en definitiva, a perdre sobirania alimentària. Pensem que per transformar aquesta agricultura, que torni a ser local, sostenible, de proximitat, necessitem comptar amb tots els recursos que tenim localment. I aquests recursos, entre d'altres, són les plantes silvestres comestibles i les varietats agrícoles tradicionals. Una llavor es conserva quan la gent la cultiva, se la intercanvia, se la passa amb els familiars, amb els amics, amb els veïns. Per això és importantíssim posar a disposició de tothom qui vulgui llavors que són de tots, però que són de ningú. Tothom les pot fer servir, però ningú se les pot apropiar. De tal manera que comercialitzem llavors de plantes silvestres comestibles, de varietat tradicional, per tal que qui vulgui les pugui plantar. I després que se les guardi, que no es compri mai més, que se les intercanviï, perquè són llavors lliures. Aquest és l'objectiu.
So, Dr. Vandana Shiva, Honorable Minister of Equality and Feminisms, Rector Núria Almirón, that he has to leave a while ago, President Montserrat Vendrell, Dr. Núria Almirón, members of the governing team, members of the university community, friends. It's truly a great honor and a privilege to stand before you today as we conclude this momentous occasion, the conferment of an honorary doctorate to Dr. Vandana Shiva, that she is the 21st individual to receive this recognition from our university. Dr. Shiva, please allow me to extend you my deepest gratitude on behalf of Pompeu Fabra University for accepting our highest distinction and joining the STEAM community of doctors at our university. Having you among our members make us a best or a better university. I'm absolutely sure that Professor Núria Almirón, the former rector of our university, shares this feeling with me. We all thank him and his governing team for initiating and leading the first steps of the awarding process that we culminate today with this event. I would also like to thank Dr. Núria Almirón for her outstanding laudatio. Hers was not an easy task since Dr. Shiva's trajectory can hardly be summed up in a few words. However, she has done, I think, a fantastic job at synthesizing her many contributions to knowledge, her efforts in preserving biodiversity, and her advocacy for the most vulnerable communities. A moment ago, I presented her with a small package consisting of seeds of 5 different types of wild native plants to Catalonia, cultivated by Echarcolan. As you have seen in the video, the work and values of this association mirrors those of the inspiring initiative led by Dr. Shiva. With this small gesture, our aim was to celebrate Eurovision, expressively encapsulated in the well-known sentence, "These seeds belong to everyone, but cannot be claimed by anyone." Following the tradition in several cultures, we also want them to represent our determination and will to build a common future together. And let me add something else. I think I think these seats offer a good metaphor of the principles that shape who we are as a university and that should inform the path we have to travel in the coming years. First of all, like these seats, in order to grow strong, our university needs to concentrate its efforts on those elements, on those nutrients that are essential. This means knowing what and how to prioritize, and also knowing how to take opportunities. It's easier to grow stronger if the environment is fertile and rich. And that is why the university must not only adapt to its environment, but also contribute to make it more competitive and richer. The UPF will be stronger if the ecosystem of the institutions that surrounds us is stronger. Secondly, these seats can also be interpreted as an expression of the need to look to the future and to enjoy the journey without haste, with passions. It's important to value all that we do today and the work of all those who make it possible, but it's also essential to be aware that a large part of the meaning of everything we do now lies in the future, in the impact that our actions will have in the medium and long term. Moreover, they are also seeds that speak to us of the need to understand our role as a university in terms of knowledge transfer and in terms of our contribution to others. Thirdly, there is no point in denying that the future of these seeds does not depend on them alone. Their growth is conditioned by many factors that sometimes are unpredictable or difficult to control. Likewise, the growth and consolidation of our university does not depend only on us and must face sometimes some uncertainties. But just like plants, the probability of success of this process are higher if all its components work well and in a coordinated manner. Every university, including Pompeu Fabra University, is above all a collective and a collaborative project. I don't want to go on any longer.
The university still maintains ties with Israeli academic institutions and enterprises being complicit in genocide. The UPF still holds mobility agreements with Tel Aviv University, Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Haifa University, and Reichman University. UPF forms part of 3 EU Horizon projects, which include Israeli universities and Israeli enterprises. The UPF still cooperates with enterprises such as HP Printing and Computing Solutions, whose complicity in genocide is well documented. We demand the university to cut these ties and pressure the EU to refrain from this project as Israel is continuing to bomb Gaza and commit genocidal actions against the Palestinian population.
Tomorrow, the UPF Council, the government will meet. This meeting is the chance for the UPF to go beyond just words and symbolic gestures and formally decide to stop complicity in the ongoing genocide. The time to act is now. Please join the concentration in front of the main entrance of the campus after the choir's performance to demand a halt to UPF's compliance in the genocide, femicide, and ecocide that Israel is committing against the Palestinian people and land. No one is free until everyone is free. Boycott Israel, Universitat Pompeu Fabra, and free Palestine!
Thank you for your words. As you know, tomorrow we have the Government Council and we will debate and discuss the Palestinian situation. So thank you for your works. So your work and your trajectory, Dr. Shiva, are a reminder of the interconnections between environmental stewardships and societal well-being, between each of us as individuals and the community we belong to. Dr. Shiva, welcome to the community of Pompeu Fabra University. From today on, your university and also your home. Thank you very much.
A continuació, el cor de la UPF, dirigit per Aida Vera, interpretarà l'himne universitari Gaudeamus Igitur. Preguem als assistents que es posin dempeus. L'acte s'ha acabat. Moltes gràcies per la vostra presència. Us convidem a una copa de cava a la sala d'exposicions.